that quietly have an agenda to them. There's a purpose we wear these masks. And if you've been listening to me for any length of time, you know that, or you've heard me talk about these masks for quite a bit of time, or different times that I've had different shows. And these masks are important because they keep us connected, but disconnected. Disconnected on a more authentic level, but connected on a more superficial level. And unfortunately, it is the superficial level that prevents us from acknowledging one another as human beings, humanity. It prevents us from making those real, authentic connections with each other and being part of people's lives from a healthy and proper perspective. So I believe the superficial level, I like to call the low hanging fruit. That's where we get the name calling, the slanderous mannerisms and conversations, the gossip, the MURDER kind of things going on, and those things that put us in a place where we're ready to assassinate one another. And I believe that is the superficial space that a lot of us come from. And it's not purposely, I don't believe it's purposely, but I do believe that this is the order, or it has been the order from the beginning. And the beginning I'm talking of is the biblical beginning, that when Adam and Eve, after the sin had taken place, or they had committed this sin, they're now covering themselves up with fig leaves. And I believe that is the beginning. And it's not so much whether you believe the Bible or not. It is that this is the nature of man. So I think that whether you believe the Bible or not, there are certain wisdoms that we can draw from different teachings, or if not the Bible or different faiths, we can draw wisdom from that. So don't be afraid, or don't get caught up in just where the references come from. Get the wisdom and the understanding that's going to help us facilitate our own lives. And sometimes we don't like the messenger for various reasons. Again, to each his own. But if the messenger comes with wisdom, regardless of what he looks like, how long his hair is, or how short his hair is, or again, it can be a host of different things that we may be dealing with. Make sure you get what you came for, especially if you're looking for something. If you're not looking for something, it's easy to get lost or get caught up in the small details of life, or small details, whether he was black, green, purple. So make sure you're going to get the very thing that you're going after. So that being said, my question to you is, what mask do you wear to protect or distract yourself from perceived internal or external threats? Now, we all wear masks to some level, not all of us, but to some level. And in order to take this mask off, or be prepared to remove this mask, the individual is going to have to go through perhaps a detoxification. You're going to have to detox some things that we have throughout life, we've placed our trust in immensely. We're leaning on that thing. It means the life to us. And those are the very things that oftentimes life requires of us. It requires life in us. And when people, the powers that be, the systems that be, and it's not picking out or any on anyone's system, but the reality of it is that we live in a system of systems. And some of these systems are fair, and some of these systems are unfair. And to what degree, it varies. But when a system has been created, in order to look like them, so to speak, it can be difficult coming as our authentic selves. It can be very difficult coming or showing up as our authentic self because the system doesn't recognize your authentic self. The system wants no part of your authentic self. Now, it's nice showing up, being an authentic person, but by and large, the system wants no part of your authentic self. Now, from one to another, we can share those authentic stories and gather or gain a lot of knowledge and wisdom from those stories. But the system in itself was prepared or fixed to rule over us. And I think the challenge for many of us is coming out from under that system. Now, the system is on various levels, racism, colorism, and just a host of different things that make up the system. The judicial system, uh, I mean, a host of different systems. So the point I'm making is that at some point, in order to think freely, we have to come out from under the very systems that have been created. And at some point, we find ourselves being indoctrinated by these systems. Now, this is important because when a man or woman, human being, when they are indoctrinated, they begin to think like the system. They begin to respond like the system. And to respond otherwise means that we've got to go back and fix something. Not in truth, but we can find ourselves thinking outside of the system. And for those who will escape the system, so to speak, uh, it can be a lonely road. And this is what we're going to be talking about: the challenges of taking off that mask and learning to live without the mask, removing the mask and discovering who we are. So the question is, what mask do you wear to protect yourself or to distract yourself from a perceived internal or external threat? I want you to think about this. Now, I want you to think about this. All jokes aside, I want you to think about this because this mask that we have all worn to some degree or some level, it has been the very thing that has kept us from making the progress that we're desiring or looking for. And if you wear the mask, you end up losing yourself wearing the mask. If you don't wear the mask, you can spend a lifetime trying to find yourself. The mask we wear, identifying the progress persona. Now, we're going to talk about different kinds of masks. And so, just for clarification, these masks that I'm talking about are not, obviously, they're not a particular mask or a catcher's mask or a mask at some kind of ball or something or masquerade. They're the mask that prevent us from being seen. They're the masks that prevent us from being recognized. They're the mask Absolutely. They're the mask that bring out the worst in us. So we're going to talk about the mask that we wear, identifying the different personas. Now, the first mask is the unflappable leader. Now, this unflappable leader, we are talking about the person that just blah 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 blah, just talks and talks and talks and talks and talks. That's the leader we're talking about. The unflappable leader, the leader that does not ever be quiet. That's the leader we're talking about. And I want you to find yourself in this. It's not a judgment call, but I want you to find yourself in this because it's important. Now, as many of you may have seen my different conversations, watch me here on LinkedIn or different platforms, I mostly talk about healing, working with men. That's what I do. I've been working with men for some years now, but I mostly talk about men healing. And part of this healing process is being prepared to find yourself, find who you are, recognize yourself as I'm sharing these different types of personas of the high achieving leader. So it doesn't mean that you have to be a high achieving leader because the mask is something that many of us are wearing. It doesn't mean that we're all wearing masks now, but we may know someone, or perhaps we're still wearing a mask. So the first one was the unflappable leader. That's a leader who just talks, 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 and talks some more and talks and talks. The second is the tireless provider, the leader that is always ready to provide, always ready to take care of someone or something. That is the tireless provider. The third persona, or the individual who wears this mask, is the emotionally contained rock. Now, this is the person who is somewhat stoic to a degree, looks pretty sound, and just appearance looks like he or she has it together as a leader. Again, stoic and just perhaps appearing like Fort Knox. You can't get to them, just emotionally together. The fourth persona is the always knows best strategist. Now, the person who has all the answers. That's the fourth persona. The person who is a know it all, for like a better way of saying that. Now, the fifth persona is the perpetual optimist. He or she is the person who sees the glass always full, or it's full, or, well, I wouldn't say it's almost empty. I would say it's almost full. Or I would say that, hey, that's a great job. Well, no, you did okay. It looks great. The person who is an encourager, but doesn't appear to have any kind of downtime, doesn't appear to have any kind of situation where he or she is going through anything. Now, here's the thing about all five of the personas that I've just shared with you. Each of these individuals are denying a struggle. Each of these individuals are denying a struggle to be their authentic selves. And this so happens with us as leaders, whether you're a high achiever leader or somewhere in the middle or somewhere on the lower level. These personas vary for each of us. Now, I'm absolutely understanding this topic because I was one of those persons who wore the mask as well. I'm not afraid to say I wore the mask, and wearing that mask was absolutely killing me. It was destroying me. And just a really quick story. I've shared this story before in the past. there was it happened in my around my mid 20s. I'm much older than that now, but it happened around my mid 20s. I was on my way home from a job interview, and I was listening to gospel radio. And in this particular time, I was stuck in traffic. I was in Las Vegas at the time, stuck in traffic, and just construction everywhere, and just noise, and just listening to the radio. At the same time, I was like, man, I needed work, I needed the job, and the only thing that came to my mind was getting home and having my mother ask me a zillion questions. Zillion for me is like 1,000 questions, a lot of questions. So that's what I thought about. My mother asking me a lot of questions. And I wasn't prepared to answer those questions, to the point where I was just getting exhausted even thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, this one day I had, or that particular day, something just came over me, and something came over me. I remember just the tears came coming down my face, and I remember just pounding on the steering wheel, and just and just going through something. I don't know what it was, just going through something. And so at some point I pulled over. I got off the main road there and pulled over to like a shopping plaza and began to just talk to God. Begin to talk to God, have a conversation. And it was just myself in the car and just talking out loud. The tears were going down my face. I remember I was just beating on the steering wheel because around my mid 20s, I found myself coming to my wits' end about wearing that mask. That's what I was going through. I had come to my end of all ends. I couldn't fix my face to put a smile on my face because I should smile. I didn't want to do that anymore. I did not want to do that anymore. That was the conversation I was having in the car that day. I was fed up with myself for just having to feel like I needed to submit to that mask, that other person, that I needed to smile when I didn't want to smile. That each time I was walking into that job or seeing someone that I didn't know or a stranger, they smiled at me, I had to smile back. I didn't want to smile anymore. Not because I was angry at the world. No, I had come to my end. And that's the goal of this broadcast, is hopefully to be a catalyst where you are prepared to come to your end. Because until you and I come to our end and be prepared to reveal, hey, Marcia, thank you for joining. Good evening to you. Until we are prepared to come to the end of wearing that mask, being able to say lift off, and to surrender that mask forever. Now, don't get me wrong, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. So, one of these personas that I've just read to you, that might be you. Now, let's make sure we cover all the bases, because if I missed your persona and what I shared with you moments ago, perhaps your persona is related to fear. When you see people, you can find yourself being afraid of people. People are afraid of people sometimes. You can find yourself hung up on a past mistake that you had made, and you're still hanging out in that place, and you can't get ahead. And so now it is the guilt, the shame, the unforgiveness that you have placed upon yourself. And maybe it's something deeper. Maybe you've been assaulted on some level, physically, emotionally, sexually, and you can't forgive yourself. And so now the persona of the person wearing that mask, that's the representative that shows up. And this is by no means an exhaustive list of what I've shared with you. But in most cases, many of us are wearing masks. We find it difficult to be comfortable in the midst of others because we've got to put the suit on. We've got to go through some kind of process before we can speak to our brother or our sister, our neighbor or friend, whoever they might be. And that when we see people without the mask on, it's hard to make connections with them. Or we find ourselves having an issue with someone being authentic or an issue on how they might show up. Because in some cases, or in a lot of cases, the challenging things or the benefits thereof, and I'm being facetious with wearing a mask, I'm being facetious when I say this, is that it prevents us from being truly happy for others. It prevents us from showing up authentically. It prevents us from knowing thyself. And when we don't know ourselves, it's super easy for someone else to pull the wool over our eyes. So, in this conversation, as we've been discussing the mask, we all have been a part of that. I have not been wearing the mask for me at least more than 25 years now. Excuse me for a second here. Yeah, so for me, yeah, I have not missed the mask. I've not missed that mask because it was a lot of pain having to keep that frown up or that smile up. Great question. Marcia asked here on LinkedIn, why is it so hard for people to exhibit their authentic self in today's society? That's a great question, Marcia. I believe the challenge that most people have with being authentic is that they're uncomfortable with themselves. They're uncomfortable with knowing themselves. It's uncomfortable having to, to look at your nakedness, to look at your truth. What does that look like? What does that truth look like when we're naked in our truth? And obviously, I'm speaking metaphorically, but when we're standing naked in our truth, as was Adam and Eve in the garden, there was a nakedness, there was a holiness, a cleanliness, if I could say that word, about their truth, who they were. And somewhere along the line, there was this serpent. And now, whether or not it was a serpent or not, I don't even want to get into that conversation with you. The point of it is that there was a thought that Eve had conjured up or thought that showed up in her mind that caused her to challenge the instructions she was given. And when she began to challenge those instructions, she was in absolutely, Wayne. Wayne says here on LinkedIn, the naked truth can be ugly. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that right in itself can be one of the things that prevent us from showing up and being authentic because the truth is ugly. It can be ugly, but at the same time, the truth can heal. And I believe that's the goal of the truth, is to heal, is to go through those changes, to go through those processes and different ups and downs, ebbs and flows of life, those feelings and the emotions that come with coming to that nakedness, that truth that is for all of us to be part of, for all of us to take part of. Not only be part of it, but to take part of it. Yeah. Well, okay, Marcia says Adam was given the instructions, not Eve. Okay, you're going to make me dig. You're pulling on me, Marcia. Okay, surely Adam was given the instructions. Okay, now if you go back into the book of Genesis, I didn't want to go there, but Marcia was pulling on me over here on LinkedIn. So now if you go back to the book of Genesis, chapter 3, Eve, in fact, repeats the instructions that were given to her. So she was aware. So whether it shows us who God spoke to in the Bible, or God specifically spoke to Adam, yes, he did. But Eve in herself, she was fully aware of what she was not to do, because she actually had given those instructions to the serpent. And so he didn't respond to her that, no, that's not what he said. He didn't, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, he didn't mean it that way. And so after the serpent began to talk with her, begin to convince her, begin to reveal the motive that God was perhaps lying to Eve, that she, in fact, eating of this fruit, she could be like God, having understanding or the wisdom of good, or the knowledge of good and evil. So she was absolutely aware of what she was not to do. And I'm sharing this just to kind of clarify, and it's not to blame women. That's not the goal here, but just to explain that Eve was aware of what she was not to do. And she, in fact, did it. And then she had taken that fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, shared some with her husband, as we know as Adam. And once he had eaten of the fruit, mankind had fallen. So if you see something different, Marcia, please share that with me. I'd love to read that, or look into that. I'm not afraid to say I might be wrong, but I could be. Yeah, just give me some more clarification on that uh, if you have your Bible near. I'd love to hear that. And Wayne, says here over here on LinkedIn, also think in a world social media self-comparison and judgment forces folks to show up authentically. Absolutely, Wayne. Absolutely. So thinking of Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that comparison is a Wayne says comparison. Actually, that's a good word. I believe that was actually happening in the garden. That Eve was put in a position where she had to compare the two, so to speak. She had to compare the two with the information that she was already aware of, and then what the serpent had presented to her. So through some analysis, comparisons, and it doesn't say that she was comparing the two, but through deductive reasoning, she had to compare the two. There was some kind of comparison going on. So that being said, somewhere in here, you're going to find yourself. Now, this conversation is not about a judgment call. Unauthentically. Okay, unauthentically. Absolutely. Thank you, Wayne, for the correction. So Wayne says again, just to kind of clarify his comment, it says, also, I think in a world of social media, self-comparison and judgment forces folks to show up unauthentically. Absolutely. Absolutely, Wayne. Absolutely. And again, as you said, you used the word comparison. I think that was the issue that had taken place in the garden. She compared, and eventually they both showed up unauthentically. They end up covering themselves. And I think this is just where a lot of us are at. We end up covering ourselves and unafraid, or at least afraid of the nakedness, the naked truth. I think there's absolutely benefits that come with removing these masks as opposed to having full knowledge of wearing the mask. Because here's the thing, even with wearing the mask, when you come into an understanding that you are wearing that mask and the sheer exhaustion of having to put that mask on at different times, different intervals as you are going throughout life, whether you are in a workplace, corporate environment, corporate space, corporate environment, whether you are at some kind of conference or with your colleagues or at lunch eating with colleagues, it could be anywhere on the outside of the four walls or your resident that you are having to uh, put that mask on. And when we are put in those positions, we are absolutely showing up unauthentic. We're not our authentic selves. And the challenge, as I stated earlier, is getting back to our authentic selves. And it's interesting because I relate wearing this mask to perhaps like the 12 steps that a person goes through, a person who might be dealing with alcohol, an alcoholic, or narcotics, drugs, or something like that, some kind of 12-step program. And it's interesting because I think when we understand that even to remove the mask that we have all been connected with, we're all wearing different masks at different times. I think to wear these masks and be prepared to say, you know what, I'm sick and tired of wearing this mask. Now, this mask that we're wearing, it's not just one mask because this mask oftentimes comes in layers. I believe that when we wear this mask, it's very much the same as a person who is detoxing in a 12-step program. And I believe this is the reason why we need coaches or a therapist who can help us reveal the truth about ourselves. And as Wayne stated, as ugly as the truth may be at times, it's unnecessary to get to our healthy place. And all too often, this healthy place or this unauthentic place is chosen not because we have nothing better else to do, but it's chosen because it comes with, I believe, I'm going to just put this out here, it comes with our nature, the nature of fallen man. And if I could be more spiritual, it comes from a nature of a disobedient spirit. That spirit or that persona, that thinking, if you will. Now, don't get caught up or trapped up on the word spirit, but it's a motivation. So, a particular motivation that goes against the agreement, a particular motivation that wants to do its own thing, that opposes the truth, that opposes correction, a particular motivation that is argumentative, perhaps, but nevertheless, a motivation that is anti progress, such as the mask that we wear. It's anti progress. Now, I hope that you are getting something out of this. I hope that this makes a lot of sense here. Marcia says over on LinkedIn, social media is the detractor of who people really are. Too much are behind the mask because no one wants to be left out. Absolutely, Marcia, absolutely. And I think that even comment even kind of came to my mind. I didn't share it with you, but it was in my mind somewhere. I was going to say that, but nevertheless, you are perfectly correct on that. It is because we feel like we're going to be left out. Now, It's interesting. One of the things that they use in marketing is the method or the concept of fear of missing out. And I believe it's called FOMO, FOMO, fear of missing out. Now, imagine, if you will, that the individual has been wearing this mask for however long, and I think we all have been wearing this mask from the inception of life. Now, the individual has been wearing this mask for just years, and you've got some person who's a wizard with marketing. He or she wants you to buy their product, and they're going to describe this product or share the information pertaining to this product, that, hey, this product does XYZ, and you can do this and do this, and it cuts 25 different ways, and you need to get this product, because if you don't, your kids are going to starve, and all these different things. And so it's done purposely. That's my point. And so this mask that we have all been wearing is superficial. It's superficial. And so it responds to erroneous information a lot of times. This mask that we wear sometimes, because we have been deceived, all of us on some level, and now it's quietly finding our way back, climbing out from under the rubble of the disturbances or the tractors, as Marcia says over here on LinkedIn, climbing out from under that stuff and finding and discovering out who we really are. And I tell you, very few people will come to the place of that understanding. Very few people, because we've been caught up in this mass, exchanging one for the other. And that exchange happens quickly now, quicker than you can snap your fingers or blink an eye, a nanosecond perhaps, the changing of that mask. And so what happens with these masks? These masks are personas. They are personalities now. Understand this now. I'm going to dive a little deep in here now. These masks are personas. And because these masks are personas, personalities, I'm saying, the individual who has been accustomed to wearing these masks, they have created an entire personality. This is not about not smiling when you don't want to smile, but the individual creates an entire personality behind that particular persona, to the point where they are living and eating and breathing with this particular persona, this personality. Now, I'm going to step out on a limb here and say that throughout life, many of us have worn this mask, myself included. And so to wear these masks on a continuous basis, absolutely, absolutely. I'll get to that in 1 second, Marcia. So now to wear these masks on a continuous basis, we become further entrenched into the personality of that persona, that personality, however many they may be, because typically or ideally, there's more than one mask that we're wearing. So if you could imagine, each of the masks that we have been wearing throughout life has a persona. We may not give them names. Well, this is John, this is Stephanie, this is Sheila, this is Mike, and things of that nature. But that is essentially what's taken place, is that they're personalities and personas that we have created. Now, the challenge is getting behind these personalities and personas that we've created and discovering our authentic selves. And rest assured now this might be a little off the cuff, but rest assured now, the persona, the personality that we've created, it, she, he, they, whoever they might be, the persona wants to be at the head of the table. That persona wants to take the lead. And so I believe this is oftentimes the fight, the dilemma that we have as people. Not just the thoughts, but what mask am I going to wear? Who's going to show up? What representative is going to show up? The challenge is recognizing the mask that we're wearing. And on a deeper level now, on a yearning, I shared my story with you earlier in regards to what had taken place with me when I was in Vegas around, again, mid 20s, 25, 24, some sort. I shared with you earlier that for me, it came with tears. It came with pounding on the steering wheel at that particular time. It came with frustration. It came with being angry at myself that I had to even submit myself anymore. I was angry at myself because I didn't want to do it anymore. But I felt I was being pulled to respond to that mask. I was being pulled to respond to that that feeling because I didn't know myself. There was absolutely something authentic about me, but I was unaware of it. But I knew deep down, I just had enough of wearing that mask. And I believe that there had been a couple of books that I had been reading. One, the Bible, and secondly, there's another book that I had been reading was called The Fire in the Belly on Being a Man. And the author's name is Sam Keen. I think he may have passed away by now, but he does men's studies. I read his book many, many years ago. Again, that's Fire in the Belly, and the subtitle on Being a Man. And I read that book. And again, and I'm sharing this with you because I think those two books were the facilitators of my change, my metamorphosis, my transformation. And I I'm sharing this with you because when you have those bad days and when you're ready to make this transformation, or at least from the information that I've shared with you, you've got some kind of insight or glimpse of what it looks like just from my explanation that I'm sharing with you. You got some idea of what it looks like. So I'm sharing this with you so that you are aware, so that when you have a bad day, you can be okay with having that bad day. Not be so quick to rush to try to fix something because it doesn't necessarily mean that something is broken. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have done anything wrong. I think over a period of time throughout life, we have all read perhaps different books, seen different things, movies and things of that nature, heard different things, had in depth conversations about certain things. And at some point, some of the information that we've read throughout life, it comes to challenge our belief systems. And believe it or not, even for the mask that many of us are wearing, there are belief systems that are connected to those masks, as well as the personalities. So the belief system at some point for the many masks that we may be wearing, having to put one down, put another one on, put one down, put it, and just the craziness in all of that. The craziness in having to one mask on, wax off. For me, it was, hey, Marcello from Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you for joining, man. I appreciate you. Thank you for joining. So it can absolutely get exhausting wearing that mask. And so again, I'm sharing that with you so that when you have those days that are challenging, it doesn't mean that something is wrong. It doesn't mean that you are a bad person. It's just that life comes with the volumes of information. Hey, Divine, what's going on? Thank you for joining. With the volume of information that we have gathered over a lifetime, there's going to be information that's going to seep through the openings, so to speak, and that's going to enlighten us a tad to a degree. And it is, I believe, with those tidbits of information, they come to challenge our perspective. They come to challenge our belief system. Uh, Marcello says, I hope I'm saying your name right there on LinkedIn. He says sometimes it's hard to remove the mask. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I don't know how long you've been in here, but I've been I shared my story that I've wore the mask and absolutely wore the mask for a long time. And to the point where it was, it was a matter of life and death, I believe. And I will go out there on a limb and say that. In fact, it is a matter of life and death with the mask because as long as we are away from our authentic selves, we are not going to find our purpose. You cannot find your purpose in a lie, and in a lie, or at least perceiving yourself to be one one with the one with the lie, or one with the nonsense, or one with the stories that we tell ourselves to cover up. You're not ever going to get to your purpose. And then this is not a, I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. You're not ever going to get to your purpose by lying to yourself. Any of us. Myself, I had to take the ugly truth, as Wayne says here over on LinkedIn. I had to take the bitter pill of the ugly truth, and it was ugly. It was ugly. I felt ugly. I felt just disjointed. I felt disconnected. But somehow life was chasing me. And life was chasing me. The relationships that I've had in the past, I found myself again. This is wearing that mask. I found myself quickly ready to blame the other person for the things that didn't go right, but yet at the same time ready to receive accolades for the things that went right. So wearing this mask, there are no benefits from it. It can perhaps put you in right groups of people, maybe right, I don't know, right spaces, and next to the right people, and I don't know. Yeah, that's not for me anymore. But nevertheless, um, Marcella says here on LinkedIn, it's easier to stay covered. It is, man. It is. It is when you don't have the knowledge, when you don't have the knowledge of who you are. And yet I will step out here on another limb. I believe who you are is spiritual. Who you are is a spiritual human being. And that's the information that we need to be prepared to uncover with the help of a coach such as myself, or a therapist, or anyone who's on that level. Uh, be prepared to have those deep conversations, because the only way that you're going to lock the door, the only way that any of us are going to lock the door, is that we unlock those doors that keep us from showing up as our authentic selves. We must unlock those doors because the truth of the matter is that a lot of times I believe the truth of the matter is that a lot of times there is a agenda with the mask. As I stated earlier, each of these masks have their own personalities, whether it's fear on some level, fear, rage, rejection, abandonment, whatever the issue is, whatever the mask is, each of these masks have their own personality. And that for an individual who doesn't know who they are on a much deeper level, the mask ends up controlling us. We end up becoming one with the mask. And as Marcello says here, uh, having a difficult time taking that mask off or uh, uncovering ourselves. You're not by yourself, man. You're absolutely not by yourself. So please don't take it as that or be ashamed. And it takes a lot of courage to admit that, man. It takes a lot of courage to admit that. A lot of people won't say that, but the reality of it is that it can be very difficult to take that mask off. As I again stated earlier, as I shared my story, it didn't happen overnight now. It didn't happen overnight. Taking that mask off. It was a matter, again, it was a matter of years having to, again, going through that detox as if you are on a 12-step program. And so that's why I admire those individuals who have had trouble with alcohol or drugs. I admire them because, in a lot of cases, that's where a lot of us need to be at on some kind of 12 steps program because we, in fact, we have to detox from life in itself and the mini mask that we have all been wearing or the mask that was given to us at times because of the fear that our parents lived in. Our parents may have been fearful, and naturally, because of their fear, we may not have been able to do certain things, and so they passed that fear on to us. And then we end up wearing the same mask that they're wearing. And ideally, that's how we know each other is by the mask. And so if we were to come any or someone else outside of that, showing up as our authentic selves, in most cases, the person wouldn't recognize who we are. They would say, hey, you've changed. You've changed so much. And so revealing who we are and coming out from under the rubble, as I stated earlier, you're going to you might lose some dear friends. You might lose some dear friends. Over here on LinkedIn, okay, Marcello says, I will, you just got here, you'll catch the replay. Awesome. Thank you, Marcello, for catching the replay. And Wayne here on LinkedIn says, however, it may not be easier to stay hidden. It's exhausting. Absolutely, brother. I said that earlier. Absolutely. Once you begin to know the truth and having to feign the real self is a perpetual energy drafting effort. Absolutely, man. Keeping up keeping keeping up the mask. Absolutely. So Wayne is essentially saying here, I kind of fumbled that there, but Wayne is essentially saying is that it is tough. It is difficult staying hidden. It can be exhausting, especially when you've been given a particular truth about yourself or certain things have been revealed. And again, certain truths, it can seem like, well, why didn't I know that information XYZ or 2 years before? Because you weren't ready for it. You or I may not have been ready for certain information. And so I think the information or certain truths, they actually have to, it feels like they just have to kind of just creep their way in underneath the mask, underneath the rubble of stuff that we have determined to be ourselves, when in fact, it's not who you are. There's something wonderfully simple about each of us. Something wonderfully just plain and holy about each of us. Wonderfully divine about each of us. Wayne also says here on LinkedIn, there's a sense of relief letting go of the mask, as difficult as it may be, getting there. Yes, man. Yes, brother. You are absolutely preaching there, brother. Yeah, and I exhibit this. For me, it's difficult to put that mask on once you have been living without that mask. It becomes a foreign object. Becomes a foreign object once you have taken that mask off. Now, the hidden blueprint. What drives the mask? Fear of being vulnerable. Kind of like what Marcello was alluding to earlier. It can be difficult taking that mask off. So, fear of vulnerability, exposure, appearing weak. Many years ago, I worked as a flight attendant, and I grew up in a household where my family was, especially with my grandmother. I was raised with my grandmother, and very loving grandmother, and just the energy and environment that I was surrounded in, being with my grandmother. And I was a kind of kid that was a young person that would speak to almost anybody or just about anybody. Hi, hi. And I can remember there came a time when I grew up as maybe as a teenager, or just moved out the house, became an adult, and just growing up and doing life, that even when I was out and about, just doing life in a neighborhood or whatever the case might be, I would wave to people because that's what I was accustomed to doing. And that nature, that was my nature, that just saying hi to people. I just figured, hey, why not? They're human, just like I am. Why not? And I found myself being discouraged because others didn't wave back. And I'm being very transparent with you because I don't know why that was the issue. And I would take in a whole different persona when people had not waved back. I could start my day out just in a great mood, but once I had got my day started and been out into the element, to the world, and just doing whatever, and I'd wave at someone, the person wouldn't wave back, I would automatically go inward and thought something was wrong with me. What's wrong with me? Did I say something wrong, and how come they didn't see me? Now, again, I'm being very transparent with you. And that troubled me for a long time because I was like that for a long time, for years. And it wasn't until I was in my mid to late 20s, I had begun working at the airline, a major airline. And, excuse me. Now, here I was after working, or after starting this job with the major airline. Guess what my first assignment was? My first assignment was having to greet people. Now, I knew no one that I knew of, for the people that I worked with, they didn't know my situation. They didn't know that was my fear. They didn't know what I was dealing with. Now, I'm sharing this with you, but I'm also sharing with you how God places us in positions because He wants to see us healed when you're ready to heal. So here I was greeting people, still at the same time going through that. Man, why didn't they speak to me? Why didn't they say hi to me? And I would say hi to the passengers as they were coming aboard the aircraft and look them right in the eye. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, whatever the case might be. And then they just put their head down, and I had to look stoic. I had to have my stuff together and not allow, or at least in the appearance, that it didn't bother me. But in fact, it was bothering me. But after I had been working at the airline for a couple of years, or I would probably say maybe about 1 or 2 years, a year and a half to 2 years, all of a sudden that thing went away. I haven't had to deal with that since then. But like I said, this was around my mid 20s to late 20s that I was dealing with this thing. And so this was a mask that I was wearing, and that mask was probably maybe approval from others. I no longer deal with that, but I'm just sharing with you that sometimes the mask doesn't necessarily appear to be something that, oh, he's fearful or she's fearful. It can also be approval, looking for approval from others. So we've been talking about the hidden blueprint. What drives the mask? I mentioned fear of being vulnerable, exposure, being judged, appearing weak for a lot of us as men, from one man to another man. We can feel small in the eyes of another man. We can look at another man and see that he or she, or he or she, I'm sorry about that. Look at another man to see that he appears to have his stuff together. And all of a sudden we can find ourselves looking inward to compare ourselves. There's a mask that we just put on so quickly, the mask of comparison, and find ourselves not ever coming out to show up in our full potential. Or even now we've got some bad names and choice words to call the person who shows up, or that man who shows up in his authentic self, because we feel afraid or we're dealing with fear. This man makes me feel weak because of his disposition. We've got societal and cultural scripts. Real men don't show up. Real men don't show doubt. Real men don't struggle. Real men don't fear. These are all things that will show up and have us as men, and obviously I would suspect women too, people. These are all things that show up that will have us kind of shrinking back, pulling our heads back into the shell of the turtle, unwilling to take the course. Hey, Michael Rivers, thanks for joining, man. Thanks for joining. Appreciate that. Absolutely. Great energy, Curtis, he says, in every room. Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, as men, when we're not dealing with the mask, it can show up in all kinds of different ways and prevent us from stepping out in our full potential. It can prevent us from stepping out to take care of our households, take care of our families. It can keep us in a place where we're forever giving excuses for why we didn't do what we said we were going to do. It can have us procrastinating, because one thing for sure with the mask is confidence robbers. The mask are confidence robbers. The mask will take your confidence, because the confidence, with the confidence or walking in that confidence, we step out of a comfort zone. We come into, excuse me, we come into a knowing of who we are. We come into a confidence, being that we've confided in with the information that we have, and now we are exuding that information. It's showing up on how we walk, how we talk. And when the opposite is true, the mask come to steal that confidence. It prevents us from showing up as confident men and women. The mask inevitably is a protection mechanism that we will deploy. It is a Marcia says here, before I finish this thought here, Marcia says here on LinkedIn, she says, we need to remind ourselves that God made us in his own image, so we don't need masks to hide our identity. Absolutely, Marcia. The challenge is that, and I completely agree with what you're saying, Marcia, here on LinkedIn. Completely agree with what you're saying. The challenge is that sometimes people don't like the messenger. And if they don't like the messenger, it can be hard for those people, those individuals, however many millions or tens of millions of people, whoever they are, it can be hard for these individuals to find solace or truth or understanding or to extract the wisdom out of that because they are looking for the natural things to give them confidence. They are looking for the natural things to provide that protection for them. So, great statement there, Marcia. Absolutely. So, the mask provides protection for us. And I'm saying this being facetious as I say this, the mask provides protection, but it doesn't. It in fact prevents us from showing up as we truly are. We are spiritual beings. I believe that we have the ability to speak to those things that come up against the very authenticity that we were created in, the very things that come against that nakedness that we show up in as truth, that we can cast down those thoughts because they're spiritual, because to understand otherwise, they manifest themselves and they become a reality that the individual is dealing with, a mask that he or she has created out of his or her inability to find his or her confidence or their authentic selves. So they end up manifesting this mask out of sheer need to progress in life. We've been talking about the mask of progress, what they reveal about us, and how to change it. The cost of this costume called the mask. Man, time goes by so quickly. Jeez. The cost here, I'm going to try to run through these things here. I've been trying to try to keep the show within an hour. And obviously, I'm beyond that hour. It goes by so quickly. But so I'm going to run through a couple of items here. The cost of the costume when the mask becomes the cage. Actually, I kind of talked about that earlier and through my own story I shared with you. The mask becomes the cage when we find ourselves being angry at people. And it's not necessarily the people, but it's a truth that we have told ourselves at some point concerning the mask. It's a truth that we've shared with ourselves, and a standard or a an understanding that we have now with ourselves, and to disregard that understanding it can be painful because this is the agreement that we have created for ourselves. And so the mask that we wear, oftentimes when we find ourselves, and that was one of the biggest challenges for me a lot of times because I didn't want to put it on. But yet, through the process of healing and growing, it felt like I was provoked. It was like something else was, all right, put the mask on. And I felt defeated. I felt defeated when I had to put that mask on because it was not what I wanted to do. I felt like I was out of control. And so there lies the anger that I was dealing with. That mask will affect our relationships because at some point, for at least what I was dealing with, and maybe might be something that you may have dealt with or you might come to understand, that even for people that or friends that I had or known in the past or talking with people, a lot of the masks that they are now wearing, I can see them clearly now. And to me, it sounded like blah, 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 to the point where even that got on my nerves, to the point where I felt like at some point I found myself going into hiding, man. I didn't even want to deal with people, not because I had an issue with people, but because I was taking off my own mask and just to see them provoked me to put the mask on again. And I just didn't want to put the mask on anyway anymore. I got tired of wearing that mask. It was time to hang it up and again to immerse myself back into that same culture was something I did not want to do. And yeah, and that's again, it's a cleansing, it's a detox, man. I promise you, you're gonna lose weight. You're going to be exhausted for seemingly like no reason because you're gonna be fighting with yourself. It's gonna be an internal fight within yourself because the truth is knocking on your door, and now you have to make a decision to answer it, and it can be difficult answering that door. Superficial connections. That's kind of what I just mentioned moments ago to some degree. Inability to be truly seen, known partners, family working, walking on eggshells, mentoring that lacks vulnerability, having conversations with people who are just having surface conversations. Now, as a leader, there's a toll that this mask takes on us. Again, when the truth has been revealed, as a leader, we're going through something because now we've got to determine on how we're going to respond to our subordinates. Because rest assured, our subordinates, colleagues, they're coming from a place where we're trying to leave. And they're going to look at us as, wow, he or she is changing so much. They're going to look at us as if, like, we've got three eyes in our head and be uncomfortable because we may not, in most cases, reach that level of being authentic. Not yet, because it's a process. And even our conversation with our subordinates or colleagues, other team members, can be confusing because there's a whole process that's taking place within us. It's a process of change. And so that we can show up much healthier, tapping into that spiritual space, not depending on or having a reliance on the physical things, such as our money. And money, yes, of course, it's important, but not placing certain things as our gods, things that we're serving. Because ideally, the things that we're serving, they're in most cases snatched away from us. And we've got to find somewhere else to hang our head at, so to speak. So we got to be mindful of that. Now, as we wrap it up here, we're going to talk about unmasking with courage, the path to integrated leadership in life. Step one, awareness. Awareness. Recognizing when you have been provoked to some degree, and that's this provoking is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just how people show up. And kind of what I was saying earlier, whereas that when you're meeting people throughout the day, and rest assured, they've got their mask on because that's how we know them in most cases. And the unction that we have at times to be prepared to put our mask on, because in some cases we are coming into this awareness, going through this healing process. We are learning, we're being trained, we're gonna put that mask on in a moment's notice and then realize that, man, I did it again. And these are conversations that we can find ourselves having in our head. Obviously, hopefully not out loud when you're talking with someone, but they're the conversations that take place in our head as we are coming into this awareness. Know that it's going to take small acts of being vulnerable. Again, the process. It does not happen overnight. And in most cases will not happen overnight, because rest assured, the mask for most of us is what we have depended upon. And so to take that mask completely away would be like taking candy away from a baby. It would be a hard thing. Or trying to put a cat back into a bag, so to speak. It would be a very difficult thing to do. So there is a process that we're going through. It starts with being aware, the awareness that I spoke of. It starts with the small acts of, or secondly, it starts with the small acts of vulnerability, being vulnerable and acknowledging that you're going to be vulnerable and being okay with being uncomfortable with being vulnerable, because you are now, in fact, walking and speaking your truth. And when I say truth, this is not obviously to hurt anyone and just, or to say, hey, this is who I am, like me or leave me. That's not what I mean. But making that connection with who we are inwardly, or the thoughts that are taking place on the inside. Obviously, we're not necessarily sharing those thoughts with these individuals, but we are responding to those acts of being vulnerable and being awkward. It's awkward to be vulnerable at times. And sometimes we just have to sit with that vulnerability, sit in that space, and be prepared to grow from being uncomfortable. And again, these are the beginnings of coming to our authentic selves. reframing our strength. The strength lies in self awareness, right? Acknowledging certain things, being aware of what's happening, as we like to call it, emotional intelligence as well, to a degree. Acknowledging the lies that we tell ourselves, reframing our strength. So, what essentially looked like weakness, we are reframing it, looking at it at a different perspective. Because when we can reframe it, we can set ourselves free from being captive or captivated, so to speak, or held captive by the mask that we've been wearing. Now, that is the goal here. That's the goal here, is to set ourselves free. Redefining progress. The toys or the cars or the houses or the property or the guns or the people you know or just the money that you might have, we no longer define progress in these different areas. We redo- redefine progress by being prepared to look at things through clear eyes, asking for clarity, being honest with ourselves, redefining progress. And I think most importantly, we have to be that leader that learns how to create a safe space. First, creating that safe space for ourselves, because I think that's hugely important. And without creating that safe space for ourselves as leaders, we can only be a hindrance to those who we serve. Because rest assured, because we're wearing the mask, they're also wearing the mask. And let me clarify that. They're not wearing the mask because we're wearing the mask. We all have been wearing the mask on some level. But for the leader, the higher achieving leader that is prepared to do the work, and obviously this is not just for high achievers, but for the individual higher achievers somewhere in the middle or somewhere on the lower echelons of this journey, know that you have to create your own safe space first. And that those who we serve, if we're showing up with with our mask on, it prevents them from being authentic. Because when we show up without our mask on, or at least again those small steps of vulnerability that I mentioned earlier, when we show up without our mask, there's opportunities. Maybe not at that particular moment or that particular conversation. There's opportunities for those individuals or that individual to be authentic. There's opportunities for that person to, or that level of authenticity to creep out a little bit. That your subordinates, your colleagues, your team, your your teammates, your team feels you're easier to talk to. They feel more comfortable to talk with you. They feel safe now because you found your safe space. And without us as leaders finding that safe space, we are equally held captive by the mask that we all have been wearing. So it's important for us to the go beyond what is seen as we're wrapping it up here. Hugely important for us to go beyond what is seen. And what is seen is not always the truth. The truth often hides behind what is not seen. And I think that is oftentimes what we miss, what is not seen. Now, we've been talking about the mask of progress, what they reveal about us, and how to change it. Hopefully, during the hour and a half conversation that I've had with you thus far, you are prepared to say, Curtis, this sounds really good. I can use some help with this. I'm going to place a link on the screen here. Be inclined to reach out to me if you are so desiring to help with beginning the process of taking this mask off. Now, I have been vulnerable with you. It's your turn now to be vulnerable. And this is not to make you uncomfortable, but it is for you to understand that in most cases, that's the only way that this mask is going to come off, is that we're going to be made uncomfortable. We're going to have to admit some things and share some things that are not always easy. But that is the beginning steps or the works that we might need to do, that you will need to do in order to begin the process of transformation or letting go of the mask so that you can see real progress, authentic progress, and come into the best version of yourself. So there's a link on the screen, bit.ly/free 30-minute coaching. That, in fact, is a strategy call. So let's talk about it. And I have been been online with you for a while now. As I mentioned, we are streaming to 3 platforms, obviously here on LinkedIn if you are here with me, and Facebook by my personal account, that is Curtis Brooks, and YouTube, the @ Life Coaching for Men. Once more, on YouTube, the @ Life Coaching for Men. You can find me out there. And so while you're there on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our channel. So we're trying to grow that channel as well. So it has absolutely been a pleasure being part of this conversation with you, and thank you all for engaging in this conversation and just being a part of this discussion, because it truly helps to really kind of bring out that fire in me, or that energy. So thank you, Michael Rivers, for being part of the conversation over on LinkedIn, and thank you, Wayne, my brother Wayne, a good friend of mine, Wayne here on LinkedIn, for being part of the conversation, and thank you, Marcia, who always shows up. So thank you for your support as Wayne also shows up. And who else we got to thank? We got Marcello, who says he's going to watch your replay. So thank you again. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. We've got Divine, my sister Divine. Hey, how are you? Thank you for being part of the show as well. And hopefully you will watch the replay. I know that you are also deep like that too, sister. So absolutely kudos to you, because we both know that this is a lot of work here. And let's see what else we got here. And I think that's going to do it for our LinkedIn. And not sure if we had any people over on. All right, we got Soul, Light, and Body over on YouTube. True progress is measured not only by external advancement, but by the depth of transformation, he says over here on YouTube. Beneath the surface, he says, it requires honesty, accountability, and unwavering commitment. Karen Pascal. Absolutely. Now, this is the comment over on YouTube that I was reading to you. And Karen, I apologize for not recognizing you there over on YouTube. So thank you for that comment. Again, that's over on YouTube. The comment that I just read to you, accountability is huge. And absolutely, as she just stated, it takes a commitment to stay focused, to say, hey, you know what, I am in this for the long haul. And so that's going to do it. Wayne also is over on LinkedIn, or excuse me, on over on Facebook. So again, thank you all for your comments and participation, engagement. Appreciate you. We will say goodbye for now. Well, one last thing here. I always forget that thing there. So we've got a mastering the marriage mindset, a program a course that I created a little bit ago, sometime in February. So for you men who are married or single, or men or women who are married or single, check this course out. That's bit.ly/MTMM course. There you will find the information to pick up the course there, and hopefully it will be a blessing to you. So with that being said, we'll say good night, guys, and we will talk with you later. Ciao for now. Bye bye.